Welcome.
Hello, everybody.
So, what we're going to do tonight, we got you for 2 hours, all right? So here's how it's going to go. First, Emily and I have some announcements that we're going to make. They're pretty exciting. I think you'll enjoy them. And then after that, I am going to come back on stage, and I'm going to talk to you for a while. If you haven't done one of these before, I usually have a speech of some sort. It'll be about 30 minutes long. After that, I will do a Q&A. It'll be a spoiler-free Q&A this time, all right? We'll do that for 45 minutes. And then the last 30 minutes, I have a reading for you from Stormlight 5 that hasn't been read before.
So the first announcement that we would like to make is what I call stand and be recognized. There are a lot of people that have helped make this book and this convention what it is. And so we would like to, when I call your name, if you are in the audience, would you stand, please? We're going to do this by department, so please hold your applause until the entire department has stood, and then we will clap for them all. So Brandon will do the first group.
All right, so Dragonsteel's Vice President over Creative Development is Isaac Stewart. Oh, you're not supposed to clap yet, not supposed to clap yet. Emily told you. She was a teacher. She's watching to see if you obey.
Come on.
His team includes Rachel Lynn Buchanan, Jen Neal, Haley Lazo, Priscilla Spencer, Anna Early, and Ben McSweeney.
Vice President over the Narrative Department is Dan Wells. Not an employee, but a very beloved colleague, Jancy Patterson is the author of the Skyward Flight novellas, along with the story you may have been enjoying during the convention. If they are here, will they please stand and be recognized?
All right, our VP of Publicity and Marketing is Adam Horn. His team is Jeremy Palmer, Octavia Escamilla, and Taylor Hatch.
VP of our editorial team is Peter Ahlstrom. His team consists of Karen Ahlstrom, Betsy Ahlstrom, Christy Gilbert, and Emily Shaw-Hyam. I got one more. Sorry, I tricked you on that one. The editorial team also facilitates the beta readers, a group of dedicated volunteers who provide feedback on Brandon's books. If you were a beta reader on Defiant, will you please stand?
Or a gamma reader.
Or a gamma reader.
Okay, I got the big one, all right? Oh wait, no, you've got...
I gave me the big one.
You gave me the big one, okay.
You have that.
Okay, the Vice President over Operations and Human Resources at Dragonsteel is Matt Hatch. He works with Jane Horn, Hazel Cummings, Braden Moore, Kathy Sanderson, and McKenna Salone on a whole bunch of ops and HR-related tasks. Matt also works closely with Kara Stewart, who is our Finance VP, and they have the capable assistance of Emma Tan Stoker. And Matt Hampton and all money-related matters. Lex, how do you say Lex's last name? Wilhite? Yep. Lex Wilhite. We always just call her Lex. It's, I think, the Lex the first time I've seen your last name. Acts as an ops liaison among her other many roles. Ethan Scarstedt and Becky Wilson coordinate between ops and the two of us.
So, ops, please stand. Kara Stewart.
Right, take a deep breath.
Kara Stewart is our VP over merchandise and events, and her team is very large. So I'm going to go. If any of them are here, please stand.
These are all the people who've been selling you stuff all weekend and set up our events and also ship all of our stuff.
We have Joy Allen, Kitty Allen, Kaylee Arnold, Kathleen Barlow, Lily Barlow, Lee Bateman, Michael Bateman, Amanda Butterfield, Jacob Chrisman, Emma Curtis, Camilla Cutler, Christian Fairbanks, Abigail Fillmore, Adam Fillmore, Mem Grange, Jenna Hampton, Catherine Hampton, Matt Hampton, Caitlin Hatch, Zoe Hatch, Gwen Hickman, Nathan Hicks, Dallin Hill, Dallin Holden, Matthew Hope, Katie Ives, Christy Jacobson, Danny Jacobson, Rachel Jacobson, Porter Jensen, Tara Johnson, George Kaler, Annie King, Erica Kuta Marler, Lenica Lee, Laura Loveridge, Alex Lyon, Quinton Martin, Pablo Mooney, Braden Moore, Brett Moore, Camilla Moore, Avery Morgan, Nathan Mortensen, Donald Mustard III, Kellen Newman, Daniel Phipps, Ali Reap, Kara Reap, Logan Reap, Holly Rubert, Richard Rubert, Bonnie Scarstedt, Sarah Snow, Kara Stewart, Hayden Stillman, Emma Tan Stoker, Devin Thurgood, Michael Thurgood, Judy Torsak, Jamin Underwood, Morgan Wells, Lex Wilhite, and Sydney Wilson.
All right, should we bring up the slides?
We got one more.
Okay.
We would not be able to make this event nearly as amazing as it is without the help of our volunteers. So if you are a volunteer for Dragonsteel 2023, will you please stand? Thank you to everyone. Now we can bring up our slides.
All right, let's bring up the slides.
Okay.
Jeremy, if you're around. There they are. They're up.
All right. So the next announcement is that we've had, I think there are 30 or 32 new products that we've debuted at this convention. Whatever we have left will go on our online store on Black Friday.
And the store will be open for 1 hour after this ceremony, or whatever it is we call it, so from 9 till 10. Yes. By the way, my sparkly shoes will not be for sale. We didn't. Emily was wearing a tiara. She said, you need something sparkly, so these are the shoes from my Halloween costume this year. You can find that on my YouTube channel, but yeah. All right.
All right.
So here we go. I am announcing Dragonsteel 2024. Now, you may remember, if you were here when I told the story at this opening ceremony, that in the past, I was able to get away with doing my release parties on a weekend, which is much easier for everyone. Well, I got so big and sort of popular that the publisher said, please don't do this. You're releasing the books too early. We want blah, 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 blah. If they come out, if you do your release party and no one else can sell the book, then it looks bad. And I can understand that. You're a bookseller. You don't want me selling my book before you guys can sell the book. So I said to them, this last year, I am even bigger and more powerful now. How about we just decide to release the book on the weekend instead of on a Tuesday? So, Dragonsteel 2024 is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday convention. And we will be releasing Stormlight 5 to you at the end of that. Yep. And it'll go live for everybody else that night at midnight as the convention ends. So the QR code has details for you if you want to know.
Don't all go there at once and crash the website.
No, if it can't handle this crowd, then
That's
yeah.
True. So I have the pleasure of announcing something. Did anyone see this image at last year's convention? A select few of you, if you were in a one certain panel, saw this image. So we have kind of a problem in that our company keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we don't have all of our employees under one roof. So we had a dream, and Isaac came up with an image for our dream. We thought about, what if we build an HQ? Then we can have things exactly the way we want it. And then because he's Brandon, he's like, we can't just have an HQ. What if we had a bookstore?
A really awesome bookstore.
So we have made some progress on this dream. We started out calling it Dragonsteel Village, but it's not really a village. We need a new name for it. We'll come up with something.
We'll come up with something.
He's got the naming guy. But this is a color image of the type of building we want to build. Kind of a chateau-esque. Somebody said you got to build a castle because you're you, and so this is our version of that. We have partnered with some amazing people. You can see their logos there. The Will Group is a commercial real estate developer and also construction firm. And Method Studio is an amazing firm of architects, and they have been working with us on this project, coming up with ideas, trying to figure out all of the pricing. One of the things that we want to do with this situation here is not just have a bookstore and an HQ, but have a site. We want a place that's a destination for fans. Right now, right now, the destination for fans is either our warehouse or our house.
Don't show up at our house.
There's too many of them.
Don't show up at our house.
But we thought if we have this super awesome building and we have our HQ there and we have a bookstore there, and then we got thinking and we're like, what if we have events there too?
Yeah, what if you could have your wedding reception at Dragonsteel?
So, and we started thinking, what if we had a cafe there? And what if we had some community rooms that people could use to hold their book clubs? And I don't know, I finally had to stop it.
I just keep coming up with things. It keeps growing.
So the other thing we thought about is, so we actually are in the process of purchasing some land, some commercial land, and we want to build a big building that has HQ, bookstore, and events. And then we'll have a couple of other buildings on the property that are retail locations. I don't know what we will end up putting. Those will be tenants that lease from us. We might have a game store or a bakery or a
art gallery, maybe
art gallery.
something like that. So.
So these drawings are concept art for what we're calling the Dragonsteel construction project. And you may be asking yourselves, when will this amazing place come to be? And the answer is, we don't know exactly yet. Sometime in the next 4 to 10 years. This is a big project, and it also would represent, if we do what we really want to, adding several different businesses to our already crazy business. So we're being very careful. We're doing a lot of planning and thinking and looking at what kind of partners we might include. But someday, we will all go to Dragonsteel Construction Plaza Village Square, whatever we decide to call it, and you're going to be so amazed. It's going to be so awesome. There is a QR code, and as we have more information, we'll update this space. Now it's just kind of a placeholder space, but we do like fans to know what's going on, and so as we get more information, we'll put it up for you to see.
Well, 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 what do we have here? We have Words of Radiance crowdfunding campaign. We're going to run this March 5th through 29th, 2024. We're going to host this one on BackerKit. They were such great partners on our previous one. If you participate in that one, you already have an account and things like that. I wanted to give you a little preview of something that I asked to be included in the crowdfunding campaign this time. So we thought maybe we could theme it, we theme toward different orders of Knights Radiant, and I thought people need to be able to order plushies of their spren. So the art team has been working overtime getting that going. So we are looking forward to starting that now that we have finished the year of Sanderson to launch into the next thing. So March 5th, that's when that's going to happen. We already have the books. And I think next is a video about this.
I think so.
All right, so we're going to step off the stage for just a second, let you watch the videos, like the introduction for that, and then I'll be back up to start my speech. So say thank you to Emily. And I'll see you in a minute.
The Knights Radiant must stand again. Ancient oaths have at last been spoken. The Spren return.
All right. I think they might have a QR code for that one too. I'm not sure. If so, let's pop it up there. So, yep, there we are. Yay! Hello, my son. Yes, my son just yelled, "Hi, Dad." So now is the part of the release party where I blab at you. All right? And I love you too, random citizen. So, one question I get a lot is, when or how do I decide on themes for my books? Theme. It's one of those words that us English majors get excited about, and it makes a lot of other people groan. Indeed, books, they don't usually just have one theme, right? They usually have a lot of themes, and they're subject to interpretation, right? For instance, Lord of the Rings, theme might be that small and simple acts of kindness and heroism and loyalty from ordinary people change the world in more powerful ways than the movements and activities of kings. Or you might say that the theme of Lord of the Rings is that we need to have breakfast more often. Today I'm going to talk to you about the theme for the Skyward books. Because here's a secret. I don't always know the theme of my stories when I start. In fact, I most commonly don't really understand the theme of my stories until I get to the end. Is that strange? Probably not. The writers know that it's not, right? This is because rewriters, we explore the world through our stories, and that exploration is what turns into the theme. And it develops for me naturally out of the passions and thoughts of the characters and who they become along the journey. So the book is a journey I'm taking, and the theme is kind of that destination that I'm striving toward as I write. Every book starts with something. Starts with the blank page. Is there anything more intimidating than a blank page? No? Your mom? I also say that guy's mom. I wrote that line actually in my speech, and I'm like, you know what? Yes, a great white shark surfacing to bite me is more intimidating than a blank page. So yes, there are things more intimidating than a blank page. However, in my everyday life, one of the more intimidating things is that blank page. It reigns kind of supreme over my life. That's because I'm a writer, right? I see things through writing terms. But I think the blank page is a bit of a metaphor. I think it's a concept that we'll all understand, right? Everyone 16 and under is saying, oh, I recognize that. This is a set of images from an internet meme that became a kind of VR, not VR, but like a virtual experience, less a game, more experience. It's called the Backrooms. If you've never heard of them before, they surfaced on an internet forum in 2019. The idea is for these rooms, a lot of them are shots of pools. A lot of them are shots of hallways. The original one, this is a cleaned up version, I believe, from the video game, but it's an imitation of the first shot that someone posted back in 2019. And they create these sort of vaguely unsettling images using commonplace shots, right? They don't work for everybody. Not everybody looks at these things and senses that sense of disturbing unsettlingness. But for those of you who are older, these sorts of shots have been used in films quite a bit, right? You might recognize this imagery from The Shining. It's all over a lot of Kubrick's work. This idea of what we call liminal spaces, transitional spaces between one spot and another. And something about them just makes a lot of us feel unnerved. If you haven't seen The Shining, then maybe you've seen the greater cinematic masterpiece known as Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Yeah. You know, they used it too. You know, Kubrick learned from them. No, I'm joking. As someone who has written a great deal about journeys, I find the idea of liminality intriguing. Why do we find transitions to be so daunting? Why is liminal space so unnerving to us? One reason might be because of how hauntingly familiar some of these shots are, right? Like, they're a little bit off, but they're similar to things that we've experienced. Generic hotel hallways, those represent certain uncertain times in our lives, right? Times when we're between endpoints. I find this fascinating because transitions themselves aren't necessarily unnerving. Who here knows the comfortable, warm blanket feeling that comes from being in the middle of a good book or a good series, right? Do you ever feel like that? Like sometimes I will, be going through my day and I'll be reminded that I'm in the middle of a good book and that I get to get back to it later on. And I'll just have this, like I said, warm blanket feeling that I'm like, I know what I get to do tonight. I get to go enjoy this book or this game that I'm in the middle of. That being in the middle of something can be really, really comforting. Something about loving the process when you found a good book or a good story or a good game, you're eager to be back in its pages. So the journey of a book is usually a comforting one, depending on who writes it. If it's Dan, then maybe not. The book doesn't feel liminal because even though it's a transition, right? Strangely here, finishing is the daunting part rather than transitioning between the beginning and the ending. So anyone here ever slowed your reading because you're worried about finishing? Right? Anyone here gotten a book hangover? Right? Where you finish a book or series. This had happened to me a lot. I finished writing a book, and I've got a book hangover where I'm like, that went great. I knew what I was doing. Even the parts that were harder and that I didn't like as much, I knew what I was doing. And then I get done, and then there's the question of what now? And that what now is the liminality. That's the thing that is so daunting to us, which is odd, right? Our entire lives are a series of transitions, even birth and death, right? Everything we do is moving from one phase to another. In fact, there's a danger in this sort of thing. If you want to, the Stormlight archive is partially about this idea of don't get so fixated on the end point that you miss the joys of the transition. We call that journey before destination. But liminality is specifically a traumatic, can I say that word? Traumatic transitional experience. The uncertain times, the time between jobs, the time waiting for an important date to arrive, dating itself, right? Hunting for someone to spend your life with. That is an awful experience, at least for most of us. Some of you really like it. Good for you. And of course, these things all are what I mean by the metaphor of the blank page. The back rooms. These times are unnerving because they represent a question with no good answer. They remind us of times of upheaval, of uncertainty, of confusion. Conversely, being in the middle of a book is soothing because it forestalls that ending. Each page, though inevitably taking us towards something traumatic, is time we don't have to confront it during. So, you might ask, Brandon, what's the point? People do that to me a lot. That is one of the big questions I get. Why am I talking about this? Well, we're about to enter the most liminal point of both the Cosmere and the Cytoverse. Many of you are holding or have recently got or will soon hold right now the end of the Skyward series. What comes next is a liminal time where I'm handing the series off to Jancy. If you haven't heard, by the way, I wanted to stay with the Cytoverse longer. I love it. I plan to come back eventually, but I didn't want it to languish. And so I got together with Jancy about some of the big things I was planning to do next. And she's going to take over and write a sequel series we're calling Skyward Legacy right now. But we're in the beginning of the end of the middle. That's how I put it. Next year, Stormlight 5 will arrive. Barring any disasters, of course. And if you haven't heard, the Stormlight archive is 2 sets of 5. So this is a major sort of break and transition point. It's not the end. There's 5 more books, but it is kind of, as a certain book series might say, an ending. If you add on top of it the Lost Metal, I just hit a transition point in the Mistborn world as well. I almost gave this speech last year, but I thought it's going to be better to give this speech about liminality in the middle of the 3 book release parties that I'll be doing about these. So I've thought a great deal about what will make these endings land, right? 3 in a row. I do love a good ending, but I also understand book hangovers. I feel them myself, but as I said, mostly when I finish writing something. The hardest thing to do as a novelist is, for me at least, having finished one project, moving on to another. The blank page. The liminality of not yet being into a new book. The idea of leaving behind what was comfortable, the book, in this case, that I've been working on, and that I'm now an expert in, and going forward to something new. I've found that for me, one key to life peace and happiness is learning to deal with the traumatic moments of liminality. In fact, I'd say that's part of the purpose of life, is to learn how to deal with these kinds of transitions. So, I'm going to talk about a few lessons today. Things that I've learned that help me deal with, concretely getting from one book to the next, but metaphorically moving between pieces of my life. And I hope it'll be useful to you. If it isn't, at least you'll get to hear some stories about how some of my books came to be. So, story number 1 is about the Wax and Wayne books. Some of you know this already, but the hardest transition point for me in my writing career probably came when it was time to write Shadows of Self. So I wrote half of this book before I wrote the book A Memory of Light, right? A Memory of Light, though, revisions came due, and I had to work on this book. And so I was working on Shadows of Self, and then I had to jump and work on Wheel of Time because I needed to get that right. But that meant putting down Shadows of Self for a pretty long period of time as I worked on A Memory of Light. That was a hard write, a big, difficult book to get right, with a lot of people invested in me doing so. As I think I might have mentioned before, when I was working on Gathering Storm and Towers of Midnight, everyone was just happy to have someone working on the books and know they were going someplace, and they kind of stayed out of my business. But then the last book came, and everyone panicked and said, "Oh, the last book of the Wheel of Time, we need to be in his business." And so I had a lot of people in my business that I had to politely explain to whom they didn't need to be in my business. I had Harriet, and she belongs. I'm in her business in that case, right? I had Harriet and her team, and they were very good. But anyway, we got A Memory of Light done. We got it done right. But then I came back to Wax and Wayne, and I found it immensely difficult to pick back up with that story. This is probably the primary reason why you don't have Arithmetus sequel yet. Yeah, I know. That's a story I started, and I finished the first book before the Wheel of Time, and I tried to pick this whole series up again after I'd written 3 Wheel of Time books and 2 Stormlight books, and I just was in a different place, and it was really hard to get back into it, and I've still had that problem, right? If you get interrupted too much as a writer, it can be really daunting. It is maybe one of the most daunting things that happens to us. And for me, with Shadows of Self, it was an extremely difficult transition. So what did I do? I wrote Bands of Mourning. Yep. I wrote Bands of Mourning. So this is one of the weirdest things I've ever done in my career. I jumped forward and I wrote the book that took place after the one I was in the middle of. And then writing that whole thing warmed me back up on the world and the characters, and it made it possible for me to go back and finish Shadows of Self. This is partially because I knew Bands of Mourning, small spoiler here, it was going to be a little more lighthearted than Shadows of Self, which is perhaps a bit of an understatement. But this really worked for me, and I've been thinking about that ever since. What lesson can I take? Right? Like, the transition between A Memory of Light and getting back to Shadows of Self was a state of liminality that really, it stopped me for months, right? I don't get writer's block often. That was the time I've probably been stumped in my life the longest and the hardest. And so I think the lesson for me was to divide up the difficult parts of the blank page and tackle something I enjoyed about the process first, in order to warm me back up for the difficult part, right? And I thought, I wonder if there's something here. If you're moving to a new city and that's terrifying for you, maybe you can find and focus on one part of that move that you'll love. Maybe it's the opportunity to buy furniture for a new home. Maybe it's a chance to visit a cool monument at the new place. Maybe you can just gamify it a little bit. I'm really good at gamifying things. If you haven't heard, part of the secret of my productivity is I have a progress bar for myself in my spreadsheet telling me how close I am to being done. That's direct gamification. That's why you can have one on my website, is because I have that for me to show myself working toward basically my level up, right? When I was in college, I remember how hard it was for my roommate to finally earn enough money for his mount in Warcraft, right? And he watched that progress every day. Well, that's what I do for a book. I gamify it. I look at this, and it works really well for me. I know extroverts that it might seem crazy, or you extroverts, but for us introverts, like I mentioned earlier, dating's really, really daunting. My wife gamified this. She invented something she called the blind date punch card. She never actually had a physical one. I wish that she had. But she would talk about the blind date punch card. You get 10 punches in your blind date and you get a free marriage. But she always joked about that to encourage her to go on the dates. And she and I met on a blind date. Emily and I did. We were set up by Isaac Stewart, who you heard earlier. So, you know, it worked for her. Blind date punch card, right? Give your roommate a blind date punch card and let you start clicking off. I can't promise how many punches it will take to get a free marriage. So, this is point number one. Piece of advice number one. Make liminality more approachable by finding something to love even in a difficult transition. So, story number 2 of 3 on this. This is the secret projects. Remember how I said I don't normally write on multiple projects at once? I've said that many, many times in my life. If you didn't know, I really generally only work on one project at a time. Well, that used to be the case. I found a way, right? I've always remembered how hard it was to get back into Shadows of Self, and I wanted to practice getting into and out of stories. I have friends who can work on multiple projects at once, and I've always kind of admired this. Turns out a couple of years ago, I had a ton of extra time, and so I put it to good use. All of these books were written as more of a liminal exercise, with me practicing getting back into them after being away from them for a while, right? These books were basically designed so that I could work on them when I needed something to work on to keep me excited, when something else was liminal. I would often, for instance, revisions would come in, and I would do revisions. And before I would jump back to my main project, normally I would just have this period of time where it's really hard to get back into it. I would go write a few pages of Hoyd narrating this story, something very different, something I looked forward to, something really fun, and that kept me excited by the process of writing. I think there's something to learn here, as this process worked extremely well for me. Instead of losing a couple weeks between projects when I would finish them, I always was staggered on something, right? I was always in the middle of something I enjoyed. So there were fewer of these hard breaks where you're done and you don't know what to do. I would get done, and then I would say, oh, but I'm still in the middle of this thing over here. I can jump over there and work on that. This probably wouldn't work if I'd been writing 2 really exhaustive series like Stormlight. But for a Hoyd telling a story, which is a very different type of thing, and working on a giant Stormlight or a very difficult Cytoverse book, well, I was able to jump back and forth. And it helped me write more stories, but more importantly, it helped me be excited about the process. It kept me always thinking and having something I could jump back to that I was enjoying. Obviously, this could go poorly. I know people who start a ton of projects and juggle so many they have trouble finishing any of them. Some of you may be in here. You might recognize that. But for me, a little calculated distraction, having something in the back pocket to pick up to help transition between points of traumatic liminality, well, I found extreme success in this, as proven by 4 extra novels. So, does this practice of getting me back into things give you hope for a Arithmetis sequel? Yes, not immediately, but I'm sorry to keep teasing you. I don't mean to tease you. But this process is helping me learn to kind of overcome that weakness that I have as a writer, and that those breaks sometimes interrupt me a lot. So, but this is my second piece of advice on how to handle liminality in your life. Give yourself some way to have a bit of a runway when you hit that liminality. So, in writing advice for you writers, it's often better if you have a really good writing session and you finish a chapter and you feel awesome about that chapter, force yourself to write a few paragraphs of the next one before you stop. Naturally, you'll want to stop at the end of the big chapter. You've gotten it out of your brain, you've been planning it, you're super excited by it. But if you go a few paragraphs into the next one, I do this a lot at the end of one of my writing sessions. When you sit down the next day, you'll have a bit of a runway. You'll be able to read those paragraphs and be like, oh, this is what the mindset I was in. This is where I was going. And that helps you bridge that liminality between chapter 1 and chapter 2, or chapter 57 and chapter 58. Likewise in life, find ways that you can have kind of other solid pieces of continuity to help you overcome the liminality. When I was talking to the students, they had me give the address, the convocation, what do you call it? Commencement. When they had the commencement address, I gave the commencement address for the students at UVU. One of the pieces of advice I gave them is form a book or a writing group or a chess club or something with your friends that you want to keep in touch with at college, because as you hit that stage of liminality, you're going to naturally lose touch with them. It happens to a lot of us, but if you have some other piece of continuity keeping you together, then you will be able to bridge that and stay in touch. Don't just leave it a chance, come up with something. Likewise, having something like, for us, and my friends, writing group is just this really stable factor. Our lives can be going through upheaval, but we have still writing group. We still have that group of friends together. So look for ways to give yourself a little bit of running room to brace or to build up some speed for that liminality. All right. Third and final piece of advice, and then we will get to the whole point and why I'm talking about this with Skyward. Third piece of advice is a little shorter, and it's a little self-serving. It's to read. You guys might have this one in hand. I mean, you're here, right? No, seriously though, I think reading helps. It's helped me. I remember when one of my mentors, the late, great David Farland, rest in peace, he taught the class at BYU I now teach. And I took it with Peter and with Kaylin and with Alan Layton from Bridge 4. And Scar took that same class the next year. We all took this class together. Dan was there, Ben was there. And Dave got up one time and he explained a theory that I've actually wormed into some of my stories, if you look for it. And that is that he thinks stories are important for giving us a safe way to experience hard emotions. He says it's okay to like scary stories and like to be scared by them, or to see terrible things happen sometimes in fiction, because the whole point of fiction is to learn to deal in a safe way with some of these difficult emotions, these difficult experiences. His hypothesis is shared by other scholars I've read. In fact, some of them think this is the purpose for dreams, so that our brain is preparing us. It's like how when you lift weights, you make the muscles stronger. Well, books, as I've said sometimes, they're like crunches for your emotions. They're crunches for your imagination. They're there to help you work out those muscles in proxy. At least that's what I think. Again, it might be a little bit self-serving. But I do know it's true for me. Some of you might have read the essay I wrote last year called Outside. For me, stories have a power over me that nothing else does. And I might posit something a little unusual, that those of you who are prone to crying at stories you read might be building some very strong emotional muscles. Or maybe this is just an excuse to explain why I become a wreck every time Sam carries Frodo up the mountain. Seriously, every time Sam carries Frodo up the mountain, I went the wrong way. I had a Sam picture somewhere. Oh well. Did I go past it? Okay, you saw Sam. Good. All right. So, all right. Oh, yeah, I don't know where Sam went. What's that? Back? I hit back and it didn't go back to Sam. Oh, Sam was there. There's Sam. There's Sam. No, honestly, this moment, like everyone, all my friends know me as this like emotionless robot, right? Because in most of my life, I really am. And then you put on this scene, and I'll be sobbing like a baby. They're like, what happened to Brandon? Is it allergy season? Right? No. In a story, in the right story, I become a sobbing wreck, because in those stories, I get to experience those emotions of those characters in a way that normally, just for whatever my psychological makeup is, I've met a bunch of you who say, yeah, that's me too. Stories do it for us, but sometimes real life just doesn't. Well, that's one of the reasons why I love stories. So, back about 3,000 words ago in this speech, I promised you that this had something to do with Skyward. And it does. Now, you might also be thinking, Brandon, I can't believe you're afraid of the blank page, because you write kind of a lot. Now, I'm so afraid of them that I have to fill them. No, I'm not that scared of the blank page, but I've told you about those breaks being difficult for me. But one of the harder things that I do is actually come up with these speeches every year. Right? I write fiction. I don't write nonfiction. I was always really bad at it. Ask my professors in college. They would tell me to write an essay, and they would get a story instead, right? They would get this story like there's one where I had to write a big research paper. It's supposed to be 10 pages, and I wrote, famously, a detective story about a detective who was researching the topic, right? The teachers hated this stuff. I do it in every class, but it's because I tend to be really good and enjoy fiction. Nonfiction is harder for me. But I do them in these speeches because I feel it's like important for me to stretch, to try to explain myself to the world in a more traditional essay format. I think it's important that we learn to conquer the blank page. And this is probably the most intimidating blank page that I do every year, is this speech. But we need to learn to get through liminality. If possible, it's important for us to become experts in liminality, because you haven't noticed, that is what Skyward is about. It is about the blank page. It's the story of a young woman who thought the universe was one way and was forced against her will, literally kicking at some points, sorry, Jorgen, to change, right? But on the opposite side, the opposition to her is the Delvers. By now, no, I'll try not to give big spoilers for those who haven't read the whole series, but you know that the great weakness of the Delvers is their inability and unwillingness to do one simple thing, and that is to change. Change is life, literally. Without constant change, we wouldn't exist. Life is progress, and progress is impossible without change, without liminality, and without uncertainty. The Delvers, as an antagonist, represent the piece in all of us, that piece inside of me, that is terrified by the blank page. They represent the child inside of us who asks, why can't things just stay the same? I see my boys growing up and I'm like, don't do that. Stay where you are, you're cute right now. My wife would say they just keep getting cuter. But there's a part of you that just doesn't want things to change because it's all right now, right? It's working okay right now. It's the part of us that is so afraid of the dark that we give it power over us, and so we never reach the sunrise. Every story has a central theme and premise. Here at the end of 4 books and 6 years writing, I think I finally know what the point of Skyward is. And that is to present a challenge to myself and to every reader. That of learning not just to conquer change, but to embrace it, as that is the path by which we learn, grow, and become better. Because we'll never accomplish anything if we don't learn to take the blank pages of our lives, and fill them. Thank you. All right. Well, we can leave this up or we can kill it with the slides because we are now going to do a Q&A. Now, my team can tell me, are we doing the QR code thing again? We might be doing it, we might not. I think we usually do. So yes, we're doing the QR code thing again. So they're going to put a QR code up for you. And with that QR code, we can have a virtual queue, so we don't have to have 80 people lining up at the microphone and then being unable to actually, most of them, ask their question. So while we're getting that ready and we're getting a QR code for you and things like that, I want to prepare you for the kinds of questions you should ask. Do not spoil books if you, just please do not. Now, you can ask about, a world or things like that, as long as it's not giving a spoiler to those who haven't read it. Please do your best to not, there are people in this room who have read only the Skyward series. There's people in this room who have read none of my books, but are planning on doing it. So we had the spoiler Q&A earlier, and we will have a spoiler live stream in about a month on my birthday, Koloss Head Munching Day. And we are going to do this. Let me get out my phone so I know. So we're going to do this until about 8:30. And at 8:30, I will go into the reading for you. I actually wrote a brand new scene for Stormlight 5 that even my team hadn't read. I wrote it on Friday. It's one of the interludes, so it's not too big a spoiler. It's a pretty minor spoiler, so even if you haven't read the Stormlight series, this one probably won't, you really don't have to worry that much about this one. It'll have like very light spoilers, but it doesn't touch on any of the main characters, all right? So, are we ready to get that QR code going? Yes, no, keep going. I'm getting the waste some more time so that we can get it going. So, let's see. Let's preempt some questions. What am I going to work on after I finish Stormlight 5? Well, Stormlight 5 is at about 90% finished. I have less than 1 month to finish the rough draft. That's supposed to go in on December 15th, and then I will be deep in revisions on that until June. I'm feeling really good about it. Everything's going really well. In June, I will turn that in, and then I will need something different to work on. The plan for me right now is to do a prose version of White Sand, the graphic novel. Yeah. Now, you might have read an older prose version of that. I think I can get that into my current writing skill level. And so I am going to do my best to get that revised and ready for you and things like that. So there is that. After that, my main project is going to be Mistborn Era 3 Ghostbloods. And my plan is to sit down and write Ghostbloods 1, 2, and 3 before we release the first one of them. So it's going to take me a little time, and I actually plan to write Elantris 2 and 3 in the middle of those. So, yeah. This does say, where do you Warbreaker fans getting your sequel? Someday. Someday. But that's my next kind of mainline chunk of the Cosmere is going to be that. And then we'll jump back for Stormlight 6, all right? So, no big deal. I just have like the next 5 to 8 years of my life planned for that. So that's what we're going to do. So you should be able to scan this QR code, and it should start pulling your name up and sending you to the queue here. Do we already have somebody ready to go? No? What's that? Are you on this list up here? Yeah, come on up. Let's do it. All right, spoiler-free questions. Let's go.
Hi, Brandon. I'm
Hi.
Ian. My question, do we have any updates on Isaac Stewart's Mistborn Nikki Savage book?
Yeah, so Isaac's been working away at it. He has not shown it to me yet, but he's excited by it, and he's shown it to the writing group, I believe. So he is working very hard at that. We have Isaac's story, and we also have Dan. Dan's is just in the very early stages of concepting and things like that. So yeah, you can corner Isaac and ask him for updates on it. I haven't seen the book yet, but he promises me it's getting very close to where he wants to show it to me.
Thank you. And could I have one of the reality icons?
Yeah, let's see. I have one of those. Yes, I do. Woo! There you go. So, yeah. Come on up. And if your name's up here, you can go ahead and line up so you can ask your question. So whoever Stephanie is, go ahead and ask your question.
That's me. Well, today I'm cultivation.
Ah, very nice. Did you get a pin from us?
No, I don't have a pin yet.
Well, my assistant is right next to you, so after your question, you can get a cosplayer pin.
All right. My question is, I like to try to connect to the authors and artists and imagine them and their life. And so I'm wondering, if you have a room in your house that's full of all the things that people have made with your imagination, so like all your books and all the, do you have all the Doom Slugs and all the Teenix, and you have a room full? So
what we did is we actually have these IKEA cabinets that are like glass. They're IKEA, right? That Isaac put together with some help, and it just shows off all the things. We put fan art in a big sort of loose leaf book that people can look through, and we put these things out. And so when people come on tours, they can see some of the really big things, like wherever that crazy person is that gave me a giant fiberglass shard blade, that's like hanging in my signing room. And things like that. Some we put on the walls at the warehouse or in the break room of the warehouse. But yeah, we have them spread around.
Cool. All right, you might want to drop an icon for me too, just on accident.
Okay, just on accident. Just on accident. All right, all right.
Thank you.
There you are. They actually fly kind of well. Yeah. All right.
Hi, Brandon. I'm Asher.
Hey.
So if there were no fan, monetary, any constraints at all, what merchandise would you make?
No monetary constraints. What would I make? Are there no constraints at all? Working M-bots. Yep. But if you mean within the realm of possibility, that then I would just go make a movie, right? That's the ultimate fan merch, right? Yeah. I do. All right, from now on, if you ask a question and you want one of my reality icons, you can go ask Becky, and she'll deliver one to you. So only if you get in the question queue and you get to ask your question, you may go get one from Becky. So I don't have to keep throwing them at people. So, hey.
Hi, I'm Christy, and I was wondering if you are enjoying the new season of Wheel of Time. Do you have any favorite parts?
New season of Wheel of Time. New season of Wheel of Time, I think, is much better than season 1. I think they did a lot of really great things with it. I continue to love the cast. I continue to have disagreements over character arcs with the showrunner. And so my opinion on season 2 is much like season 1, except with everything better. The last episode is still, I think, the weakest, but not as weak as season 1, episode 8, right? I think that the character drama is good to excellent. I think that the cast just does such an amazing job. Like, it's really easy to picture each of these characters. The new Matt did a wonderful job. Everybody's just knocking that out of the park. But I tend to not like the things like, for instance, the Lan-Moiraine relationship, sort of stuff that's not from the books that they put in. I think that the stuff in the White Tower is just sublime. It is so good. Nynaeve's accepted test and stuff like that just really nailed that. I like a lot of the stuff, particularly in the first half, they did with Rand, and those are big changes. So in general, doing a really good job in a really difficult situation. I just wish they'd listen to me on 2 things. Character arcs, so that we can nail those endings, right? Like I feel like we don't spend enough time with certain characters or certain arcs in order to justify the things that happen in the end. And number two, we really can't have one Aes Sedai sinking entire fleets of ships. It just doesn't work. You know, there's these things called the Three Oaths and stuff. I may not be able to get across to them as much as I want some continuity of the magic system, but that doesn't matter to a lot of the casual viewers, and I understand that, but I try my best. So, my hat is off to them. I think they really improved, and I think Season 1 was fine, and Season 2 was actively good. And I'm looking forward to Season 3 adapting Book 4, which is my favorite of the books. So.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Elora.
Hi.
So we've all benefited, of course, from a lot of your amazing ideas lately, like the Year of Sanderson, Dragonsteel Con. I would love to know one idea that you were just super excited about and thought was the best ever, and when you pitched it to the team, they're like, that's not possible.
Escape room themed to the Cosmere at Dragonsteel. Doesn't that sound awesome? But then my team looked at it and they're like, we did everything we could. And Brandon, we have 5,000 people and 500 of them could get through the escape room across the days of the convention. We don't feel like we can do it in a way that would give an experience to everybody who would want to do it, right? And so, what's that? Is that Evgeny? Evgeny. I know your voice. So, no, we don't want to do VIP-only stuff like that, right? We want to have an experience that everybody can do. So it's not off the table, but something like the Hoyd Museum is in many ways better because everybody can be going through it at the same time and enjoying it and things like that. They did that on their own, by the way. They are awesome. And the MBOT experience, I heard wind that they were doing this, but we just gave them leave to do whatever they wanted, and they did it. So we're looking at stuff like that, but that's one idea that I pitched to them, that they're all just like, well, we'll run the numbers, Brandon, but it looks really bad for trying to actually make this work. So maybe someday, maybe someday. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I'm Philip. And I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as I can.
Okay.
How do you feel about names of secret projects?
How do I feel about names of secret projects? You can say the names of the secret projects, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Threnodites are described as having like a smoky shadow something to their soul. We don't really know what that is. Is this more similar to like the black smoke that comes from awakened objects in like Yumi? In Yumi and Nightblood, or is it more like Midnight Essence, like in Tress? And
it's more like Breath than it is like either one of those.
It's more like Breath.
More like Breath, but something's a little wrong with it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
All right, good question.
Hi, I'm Hank. I was just wondering, would you ever do like a full-blown horror novel set in the Cosmere?
Full-blown horror novel set in the Cosmere. Yeah, that's on the table, right? I mean, I don't think the Night Brigade is going to be full-blown horror, but it's going to be, you know, epic fantasy horror sort of thing. I don't know if I would try full-blown horror without just working with Dan and having Dan write it, right? Like, he's so good at that. But I could totally see that happening. Awesome. Yep.
Hi, I'm Amelia. I was wondering what would happen if an Awakener drew color from an emerald and then a Soulcaster tried to Soulcast with it?
Yeah, okay. That's an excellent question. So there is really the color of the gemstone is working as a sort of key to help the Soulcaster and to facilitate this. There are Soulcasters that could do it without, if it's been drained, but for most of them, it's just not going to work. They're gonna view that too much like a diamond or even quartz, and it's just gonna fiddle. It's gonna fiddle with the process to a point that it won't work. There are some people who could do it anyway.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Eldon.
Hey.
What would happen if a person from Scadrial were to try to burn a manifested metal from Roshar?
Manifested metal from Roshar. So you're meaning they're in Shadesmar, they've manifested, and they try to burn it, right?
Say a spren
Yeah.
of a radiant manifests as a bead of metal instead of a shard blade.
Okay. What happens if you try to manifest? If you try to burn that, you're not going to be able to burn that if it's something that's coming from a spren, because that's not going to be treated as a metal in your body. Like those are god metals, and that one is actually alive and awake, and it's just not going to work. There are ways, though, that you could make that work. And so it's totally possible, but you're going to need something that's not like an alive spren that's manifest like that. You're going to need some way to get access to like some Tanavastium or something like that that's not like some living being.
Can I ask one follow-up question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Unrelated. Got a lot of family that I want to bring into the Cosmere and make them fans.
Yeah.
I made the mistake already of trying to shove Way at Kings
at
them.
Yeah.
Which book would you recommend?
So I usually, it depends on the person, I pitch one of three things. So The Emperor's Soul, I pitch to people who want something shorter and more literary, right? It works really great for book clubs. I pitch Mistborn to someone who wants action adventure, right? And Tress is now kind of becoming the catch-all of just like, you haven't ever read any Brandon Sanderson? Well, try this, right? It works for a lot of people who don't read a lot of fantasy and things like that. So it's kind of one of those three, depending on their familiarity with fantasy and the type of story they like.
Thanks.
By the way, Eldon, I like your ring. I'm sure you're tired of that. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Ben. I was just wondering how you balance all of the work you do and all your projects with your family.
Yeah, so it comes down to some good scheduling, right? Not having a commute, as I always say, helps a lot. Being able to get done with my writing at 5:30, take a shower and be ready, for hanging out with family at 6. I actually get a lot more time than a lot of parents do because it's 6 until 10. They're supposed to go to bed at 8:30. They never do. So they end up going to bed at 10. And then, I hang out with my wife and I go back to work. These days, I'm going back to work at about midnight a lot of the days. But it works out. I get a lot of time with my family. It's just I schedule it, right? Like I have to forcibly work to keep phone calls with Hollywood from encroaching on that time. And my poor assistant sometimes feels like I've got a sword out and I'm pointing it at her. I'm like, do not schedule things here, but also schedule all the things for me. So she has to figure out how to both schedule all the things and not put it on top of the family time. But it is an ongoing challenge. Be good with scheduling time is what I say. It's hard, for my wife because I'll be like, I am scheduling time here. And she tends to be a little more spontaneous with these things. But me, I got to have it on the schedule and marked, and then I'm going to go do it. Yep. Oh, hello, Evgeny. Was that you earlier?
That wasn't me.
Okay. It was someone else. Okay. Somewhere else in here is a Bulgarian who sounds like Evgeny. Okay.
Hi there, I'm Spencer.
Hi, Spencer.
So I was wondering, what does Nightblood look like in the cognitive realm?
Ratho. Read and find out. Becky has a raffle card for you if you want it. Yeah. Let's just say this has been a topic of much interest to myself and some others.
Hi, I'm Caitlin.
Hi, Caitlin.
Do you have plans to self-produce your books into movies or TV shows? If Taylor Swift can do it, you can.
Oh, right, yeah, Taylor Swift. Let's point out there's a little bit of a difference between a $45 million Kickstarter and a, $1.6 billion tour. So we've talked about this, and I've come to the conclusion that for right now, I don't want to try it. There are a couple of reasons for this. Reason number one is that I like my Kickstarters to have a ton of value in them, right? I always tell my team, I'm like, we have to be giving a lot of value to people on the stuff that they do with our crowdfunding or our Kickstarters. And that means that of that $45 million, we don't make a lot of that. We're putting most of that into the products and into the shipping and into the team and into the company. And so, like, if we were to do a crowdfunded movie, like, we need like a $200 million budget, like 150 at the lowest to do a film. And if I'm going to do that, like, I would want to be giving people a ton of value, which means we'd probably have to raise like $450 million, which is just a ridiculous amount to do on a crowdfunding, right? So that's number one. Number two is a lot of times these sort of outsider projects don't work as well in Hollywood as you would hope they would. Like, Taylor Swift was able to do a thing and put it directly in the theaters and whatnot, but what we want is a partner over a long period of time. I want someone like Universal or Disney or Warner Brothers who has a long established reputation to buy in on the Cosmere and make things with me for 20 years, right? I don't want to just do one-off. I want to build something over time, and I feel like I need a really good partner in the industry to do that. And you know, reason number three is fool and their money is soon parted. I've known too many people who think, yeah, I can make a movie. Let's just say that there's a reason why The Room isn't that great. And it's because being good in one area doesn't mean you're good in another. I am really good at narrative. I'm getting good at screenplays, right? I'm getting to the point where I feel confident I could do the screenplays myself. But I can't direct, I can't cinematographize. I don't even know how to make that a verb. Right? I can't do casting. I can't do all of these things that experts in their field, and yes, I could start hiring them, but I feel like never having run a movie before, it would just be a disaster. So you would donate all this money. I would waste it all because I wouldn't know what I'm doing. And this is how Kickstarters go bad real fast, right? Like, I've only done these things when I know I can deliver, and I do not know I can deliver this for you. So for the meantime, I'm going to keep trying to use the standard mechanisms. I feel like, you know, like this year we got frighteningly close. Well, frightening is the wrong term. The frightening part is it didn't work out, but we got really, really close, right? Like, I saw people on stage in mist cloaks acting and reading my lines, okay? Yeah. And then it all fell apart and it's all dead, right? We got really close, but we're getting closer and closer, and Hollywood is really interested in the Cosmere. They recognize the value of my stories. They've been for years saying, we know this is going to break out, and it's going to be big someday, but it's all about figuring out how to make it work. And beyond that, Hollywood's kind of on fire right now, and so we're waiting for someone to put it out. And you know, so regardless, the answer is, I've considered it and I've discarded it for those reasons, but it's still possibly on the table. It is something that, you know, the awareness of the possibility is in the back of my mind, okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matt Cawthon, how you doing?
Hey, I'm Colin. Keeping towards the Hollywood side of thing.
Yeah.
Hollywood comes to you, says, all right, we've got whatever budget you need. We give you full creative control.
Whoa.
One thing.
Ooh.
It has
you're
to be
speaking my language.
It has to be a musical. What do you pick?
I go get the director of RRR. And I say, all right, you made a musical, awesome action movie. Show me how to do it. India's really good at that. So we do something like that.
Which book or
oh yeah,
anything,
which I mean, it feels like you could do any of them. Like, how much of the singing done by the singers counts as musical, right? But the truth is that Stormlight can't be a traditional film. It's got to be a long form, right? So we're down to a few options if we want to do an actual in theaters traditional theatrical release. That would depend, right? Are we making a television show or we're not? If we're making like a premium cable sort of thing, then we can go Stormlight. If we're not, then we got to go with Mistborn, right? Mistborn is the thing that can be contained in a 2 to 2.5 hour film. And so, yeah. Warbreaker the musical, though, huh? Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Brandon. I'm Austin. And my question for you is, I want to know, do dragons in the Cosmere have their own magic system? And if so, what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so you'll get some answers to this very soon because you'll be able to read Dragonsteel Prime, which, and some of you have read that. It was one of my, we'll be doing this as a curiosity like we did Way of Kings Prime. Dragons act in the Cosmere is kind of this, the primary magic system that they use is something akin to soothing or rioting. But they have followers who pray to them and ask for them to help them with their emotions during difficult times, and the dragons are able to do that across any distance, right? And so that's kind of the main thing that they're doing, other than the fact that, they can transform between a dragon and a person in shape. So there's a little bit more to it, but I'll give you those nuggets, all right?
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Lucy.
Hi, Lucy.
I'm wondering, what is your call sign? And if you were returned, what would your return name be?
Oh boy, well my call sign I've been saying is Zellion because I just always pick that when I'm doing video games and have for years and years. I won't be able to get away with that anymore because now people will pick it before I can get it. I can't be Mistborn, I can't be Dalinar, I can't even be Zellion. But what would I came up with a return name once. It would probably be something like Storyteller or something like that, right? That's what I would hope at least.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm Mary. You have no idea how many hours of sleep I have lost over reading your books. So, anyways, I'm doing this on behalf of my dad. Okay, because he keeps on complaining about how he always has to read 1,000 pages before he can understand what happens on page 1. So he was just wondering why, like the Dragonsteel logo, he wants to know why it's a dragon and why it has a knife going through it. And so I kind of connected the dots because if you look at the face of this star dragon, I think it's a star dragon, it kind of has some similar features, like with the nose.
It is. It's the same dragon. Yep.
So, yeah, I was just wondering if your first book was inspired off of Cytonic, like the Cytoverse. So,
no. My first book that I ever tried writing when I was a teenager was called Dragonsteel. And it's about a land where there's a mythical metal called Dragonsteel. It was actually a Bronze Age world, but then people started being able to make weapons out of Dragonsteel. And it was this kind of really cool thing that didn't get that far. But eventually I wrote a new version of it, and eventually it became the name of my company. And so when Isaac was looking at coming up with a logo, he's like, well, a dragon and steel, a dragon and a sword. And so he put the two of them together. And then when we started designing the logo for this, we're like, well, we'll have the dragon carry a katana in honor of Hesho, and we'll make it him flying after a ship from the Skyward universe. Hey, how you doing?
Hello. Hi, Brandon. I'm Zach. You've said previously that oath gates don't obey physical realm speed of light. Do they obey the speed of light in Shadesmar, or are they tapping into the spiritual realm shenanigans?
Yeah, they're tapping into spiritual realm shenanigans. Yeah, so you can go through, like, an Elscaller is capable of creating something that can teleport you faster than the speed of light. I think if that's what you're asking.
Yes, awesome.
Yep.
And then are bacteria on Roshar also crabs, or are they chicken-based?
Definitely chicken-based, yes, definitely. Let's go over here, get a few of these. And we are running low on time, so let's keep to the people who are up here right now, and then we'll see if we need any others. So we'll answer these questions, and then we'll see where we stand, because we got 10 minutes left.
Hi, Brandon.
Hey.
New fan, Isabella.
Hi, Isabella.
My boyfriend brought me into the fandom of the Cosmere, and I've only read Stormlight so far.
Ooh, deep end first, huh?
Yeah. He said it was the best, so I trusted him with that, and it was amazing. I have so much time at work to listen, so I mostly did audiobooks, but Michael Kramer, and I'm losing the name of...
Kate Redding. Yep.
Yes. Amazing. Which series should I start next?
Which series should you start next? So it depends on if you want a real break in pace and something very different, or if you want something that has some similar feels, right? If you want something that has some similar feels, generally we recommend jumping to Warbreaker or Mistborn. Okay. Right? If you want a completely different style, then I personally think the best of the things that aren't in a series is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. So.
Gotcha. All right. One more thing. I'm not a writer of stories, but I am a writer of poetry.
Ooh.
Would you be interested in getting a copy of a poem that I made about Adolin and Shallan?
I would absolutely love to get that.
Awesome.
So you can send that through my website form, and they will print it off and get it to me. Or if you've got a print copy, you can just hand it to my assistant.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I need a token. Who do I go to?
You go to, she's sitting right next to you, right there.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So let's finish this line, and then we'll go do this line. So, yeah.
Hey, I'm Spencer. So here I am.
There you are.
Anyway, so had a bit of more of an interesting question, I guess. So if one of your main characters came into real life and started complaining to you about how you wrote their story with an attitude of like, why'd you do all that to me? What would you do?
What would I do? I would run, because the only ones that would say things like that would be like Sadius. And I don't want to be in the same room. I want to be out of there.
Yeah, just be glad I didn't ask that to George R.R. Martin.
Yeah, George would get stabbed, beheaded. He'd be in trouble.
Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alrighty, hi, I got Aaron. I got a not necessarily two-parter, but
go for it.
Do you have anything in the work with Magic the Gathering?
So
universe crossover?
They came to me like 4 years ago, right when they were doing new, and said, hey, do you want to do a Cosmere one? I'm like, yes, please. And then I think they did that to a whole bunch of people at once. And I think that the people who came back to them, like they weren't expecting like Final Fantasy and Doctor Who to come back. And so the fact that I said yes, they probably put me on the shelf under, like at the lower end of the pile, because I haven't heard back from them, even though I'm like, hey, I'm still here, I'm still interested, so.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I have another one. My brother was up here earlier, and he was asking about Wit being a dragon, and I thought in the spirit of that, it was Wit's dated a dragon, so has Wit also dated a shard?
So Wit has dated someone who was a shard at one point, or who wasn't a shard at the point, but who at some point in the future became a shard of Enolsium, a vessel for a shard of Enolsium, yes.
All right, thank you.
Hello, I'm Brian Para. Hey, B Money.
Hey, how you doing?
I like your shoes.
Thank you. Aren't they so nice? They're very
so
sparkly.
Nice. So he stole my Magic the Gathering question. So my question has to do with the Dragonsteel project. Are you thinking about Utah County, Davis County?
Yeah. So we
have
some land that we have. Yeah, it's in Utah County. Okay. It's close to us, right? So.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm really excited for that announcement. Thank you.
Hello, is this a Shallan?
Yes.
Hey, Shallan, did you get a pin already?
I did not.
Okay, if you didn't get a pin, and if anyone who came up here and asked the question was in costume and I didn't notice it, you can ask Becky for a cosplay pin, okay? And that goes for you too.
I have a Stormlight question.
Okay, go for it.
So imagine a modern setting where Kaladin, Adolin, and Shallan are going to karaoke. What song would each of them choose to sing?
Oh, I'm so bad at these. All right. What are they each going to pick to sing? I'm so bad at karaoke. My wife would be the better person for this. She holds karaoke nights, and I sit there and play on my phone and listen to all the wonderful people sing their songs, and I do not get up there. So let's give Kaladin something real emo, right? Like The Cure, Linkin Park. Linkin Park's a good answer, isn't it? Yeah, because he wants something loud. So Linkin Park's a good answer. Kaladin's going to pick, Linkin Park. Let's see. What is Adolin going to do? He's going to pick Queen, right? Right? Yeah. Adolin's going to pick a Queen song. And what is Shalon going to do? Lady Gaga's a good answer. Yeah. Is there a song where she could sing 3 different parts? That's like a duet that she sings. She would know what she would do. She'd want one that has 3 parts, and she would force Adolin and Kaladin to sing with her. Yeah. So there you go. There's some answers. Oh wait, I thought you guys were all had questions. All right. Well, let's see. I think it's time. We can go ahead. So we're going to go ahead. Thank you all for your questions, and I'm going to move to the reading. All right. Now, if you absolutely do not want any spoilers whatsoever, you're welcome to step out. Now I won't be offended. Don't worry. However, like I said, I've done my best to pick something that is not going to give any major spoilers. It's just going to give some very minor ones that, it's not going to give too much away. But I'm going to give these wonderful people, a moment to get going. And while they're going, I'll just tell you about interludes. Some of you have heard this story before, but when I was working on the Stormlight archive, there was something I wanted to be very aware of. And that is that it feels like epic fantasy books, series in particular, have this sort of slump they get to, where the story stops being about the main characters, because it feels like the authors might have gotten a little bored with them for a while, and they get more excited by other things. And I wanted to avoid that. And part of the way I did that is I came up with a structure for the Stormlight archive, that I knew going in what I was going to be doing, so I could pace myself, so that I didn't have things that happened like, I love Robert Jordan, I love The Wheel of Time, but he pitched The Wheel of Time as a trilogy. I've heard that from Harriet's own mouth. That's not me making stuff up. I heard it from Harriet and from Tom, the person he pitched it to. Yeah. And what he pitched as the first book ended with Rand taking the sword that was not a sword from the stone that's not a stone, for those who have read it. That was the end of book 1 when he pitched it. And I wanted to avoid some of this by having this structure. And part of the structure I built in was what I call a pressure valve, where I knew I would want to explore the rest of the world in Roshar where the main characters weren't. And so I planned for spaces where I could do that in the books that would not be too distracting from the main story, so that we kind of have our cake and eat it too. So you get to enjoy the stories of these side characters, and get the expansive sense that Roshar is a real continent with a lot of different vibrant and different cultures. But at the same time, it didn't take too much of the space that should be dedicated to the main characters. And so, with that in mind, I am going to read to you the interlude named Dael Interlude from Stormlight 5. Dael had the most unusual of visitors. That was not uncommon in Erie these days, now that the owners had returned. They walked the streets with bodies bearing patterns like they were painted, red, white, and black. But these visitors were not of the owners. These visitors were different. The 3 sat at a table in her shop. On the far side, near the cubbies on the wall where her grandfather, before his murder, had put shoes. They huddled around their table, and when they'd come in, they'd pretend they were from the East. But Dael knew accents, and these men were not from the East. Besides, their clothing was very strange, particularly the tallest man with the long white coat and the strange spectacles peeking from his pocket. She hovered in the doorway to the kitchen after delivering their tea, listening in, hoping her mother wouldn't notice her loitering. "Are you certain this is the right time?" asked the tall man, the one in the coat. He had skin like he was from Asia, with short black hair and muscles like a soldier. She could almost believe he was from the Far East, where terrible men were said to be the fiercest warriors, and he had the height that maybe fit in there. But he liked sugar in his tea. What kind of fierce warrior liked sugar in his tea? "Of course I'm not sure," said the tubby one, who was constantly scowling. "The device is always unpredictable, don't you know?" This one was age-ish perhaps, and completely bald. Older, shorter. Again, he wore odd clothing for this region. Most people she knew went around with shirts and only bandeau for the women, or without shirts and only bandeau for the women. He had on robes beneath a cloak. A cloak and colorful robes? In this weather? The tall man grunted, then sipped his sugared tea. The third of them sat quietly. A shin man, maybe, of middling height, but also balding, but with lighter skin and more normal clothing for an outlander. Shirt and trousers. He didn't talk as much, but he watched things. She knew people like that. Lest she think that they were observing them, Dial busied herself with other tasks for a short time, cleaning tables, standing by the door to give welcoming smiles to those who passed on the street. She liked that part, looking at all the different kinds of people that were part of the one. She also liked smelling the ocean air. Though they were too poor to have a shop in the best part of town, the breeze still carried crisp, salty air inward to them, a gift of experience she could add to the one. Outside, an owner walked past, a hulking figure with carapace and eyes that glowed red. Then there was some discussion. Were these listeners, or these singers, these owners, part of the one? Were they part of the grand connecting experience that unified all people, or were they something else? Dial thought they must be the one. It wouldn't be the one unless it, God, encompassed everything, every person a piece of it, extended out into the cosmere to live a different life, then bring back enriching knowledge. Her mother didn't believe that, but Dial did. Because if she did, then Grandpa Yim was always with her, and she with him, because they were the same. "Serving girl," one of the men called, "could I get another?" She started, then hurried back to the table with the three strangers, her hair aflutter. She kept it long, only trimmed it when Mother forced her to. She was Iriali, and golden hair was her heritage. She quickly refilled the men's cups, though the thoughtful one, the quiet one, sat a sphere on the table. Her breath caught. A full brome? She looked to the man, who had a round, friendly face. He nodded. She snatched it up, the azure light inside it making her skin glow. But Mother would insist she ask, so reluctantly she spoke. "Would you like some change?" "No," he said, still smiling. "Though I wouldn't mind if you answered a question or two." She shrugged. "Sure." "Have you ever seen," the man asked, "a strange collection of lights that moves across the wall or floor, though you can find no source reflecting it?" Dial felt an immediate spike of terror. She nearly dropped the teapot. She'd suspected they weren't what they said, but this? "I'm sorry, I have to go. I forgot my mother wanted me to check on the biscuits. Stay as long as you want. Thank you for the tip. We are closed now. Goodbye." She scampered into the back room, now a kitchen and a living space transformed from her grandfather's workshop. She put her back to the wall, heart thundering, and tried to breathe in and out. He was back. The murderer. What to do? Find Mother. But Mother was gone. Dial searched the entire shop. Wasn't hard considering how small it was, and found nothing but a note. Back in 15, watch the shop. Oh no. No. She scrambled and found a knife for spreading butter. Then she hid in the corner holding it, trying not to be too loud as she cried and trembled. Until they darkened the doorway. 3 men, 2 shorter, 1 taller. Dial yelped despite herself, holding out the knife. The 3 looked almost bored, as if killing her would barely bother them. The tall one looked to the thoughtful one. "Look what you've done, Demo." he said, gesturing to her. I told you you should keep quiet about that. I need an intelligent spren to study, he said. They keep telling me no. Perhaps that's because you keep saying you want to study them, isn't that so? The grumpy one said. We certainly frightened fewer people when your translator didn't work. The tallest man walked up to Dial, then knelt beside where she knelt, trying to force herself back against the wall, her skirt getting twisted and crumpled, the rough grain of the wood pressing against the skin of her back, except where she wore her bandeau. The man considered her. I'm sorry, he said, to have. The back door slammed open, and there was her mother, frantic, in loose trousers and bandeau, a glowing mane of hair that was radiant in the light of the setting sun. She seemed alarmed, wild-eyed. Then she saw the three strangers. Her shard blade materialized a second later. Bright and silver, their family's hidden secret, kept quiet since it had manifested a few months back. But few secrets mattered when you burst into the room and found your 12-year-old daughter frightened by three assailants. Whoa, the tall one said, leaping backward. He was the one, the killer named Darkness. Whoa! He pulled something from his belt, something he brandished like a weapon, though Dial had never seen a weapon that was just a small tube of metal. Strange lights followed as the grumpy one smashed a sphere on the ground, somehow cracking it. Stormlight flowed up around him and strange symbols formed in the air. Mother leapt in front of Dial, sweating, holding her weapon in two hands. We knew you'd come back, Mother said. We knew you'd come for me once you heard. Mother's voice trembled. Dial crawled forward and grabbed her around the legs, terrified. They all stood quietly in the room until the thoughtful one, the Shin Man, said, What the hell is going on? We know about you, Mother said, inching backward toward the door. I spent months trying to find the tall Makabaki man who killed my father. I spoke to the families of the others you killed. We know what you are, what you do, murderer. Dial cowered. Mother kept trying to inch them toward the door. Strangely, though, the tall man, the murderer who had killed her grandfather, relaxed, lowering his strange weapon. The bald one lowered his hands, the strange glowing lights around him evaporating. I told you looked like him. I do not, the tall one said. You kind of do, the thoughtful one said. Just because he and I are both dark-skinned, the tall one said. I'm dark-skinned too, said the bald one, and no one says I look like him. You're silver most of the time, Galadin, the tall one said. Depositing his weapon back in his cloak. Look, I'm not the murderer you're worried about. That's Nail the Herald. I'm just a traveler. They both watched him, terrified, quiet, until Mother strangely cocked her head. She dismissed her blade, which made Dial quiver. Surely Mother didn't believe the words of this killer. Uma appeared a second later, sliding up the wall, a collection of lights like those scattered by a prism, except none existed here. She made a kind of shimmering pattern that she said was unique to her. It's all right, Dial, Uma said. Her voice was quiet, like the sound of glass when a cup vibrated in the hands of a musician. I told your mother, it is well. I know the Herald Nail by sight, the one called Darkness, and this is not him. I suspect he is from very distant lands indeed. Oh. Dial carefully stood up behind her mother, her heart still pounding, likely the same as all of them, until a moment later, the thoughtful one said, Can I study you? Uma said, No. I told you to stop phrasing it like that, Demo, said the one who had been called Galadin. I don't want to lie to them, Demo said, gesturing. The tall one cleared his throat. Perhaps we should be going. Mother eyed them and was still tense. Dial realized why. Yes, this was not darkness, but she'd still burst into the room, likely after hearing her daughter cry out, and had still found three strange men in the part of their shop where no customer was allowed. Mother, Dial whispered, pointing. They knew. They asked me about Uma. How? Mother demanded. We didn't mean to frighten the girl, the tall one said, with a placating hand forward. We simply heard rumors. We're scholars and like to study spren. See, Demo said, Bayon uses it. Bayon is not an example of how to be in any way tactful, Galadin said. Crazy fools, all of you. What a curious word, smashing two together like that. He stepped forward, and though he had been the grouchiest at the table ordering drinks, he made his tone polite now. I'm sorry we frightened you. We will go now, with your leave, Radiant. Mother looked down at Dial, then sighed, looking back at the men. I have a letter for you. What? What? Mother, Dial asked. You remember when that odd woman visited last month, she said. She left me a letter. It's in my nightstand. Please fetch it. Dial, confused, did as she asked. Mother remained eye to eye with the three strangers. Dial did remember that woman, the one who wore too many rings and who had helped for several weeks at the local charity hospital. A healer skilled with herbs and whose room had smelled of fish from the creatures she'd caught in the Pure Lake, then dried. She'd come for tea each morning, but had left a few weeks ago. Apparently not without leaving something. In the nightstand beside the table they shared, Dial found a sealed envelope, and on it was drawn, roughly, the profiles of the three men. These three men, except with quite comical, exaggerated proportions. She'd have found them amusing if she weren't so tense. What an odd experience from the one. How had the woman known? But then Dial's life had been turned upside down ever since Uma had arrived, and her mother had started glowing sometimes. Unique experiences indeed. She cherished thinking of it that way, as she'd been taught. So many didn't believe these days, but she did, for grandfather's sake. She scampered down the stairs and handed the letter to her mother, who tossed it to the men. I was told, Mother explained, I would know who to give this to. The tall one, Bayon, caught it. He eyed the others, then slid it open with a pocket knife. It's from him, Bayon said. Of course it is, Demo replied. Right as we're leaving. You think he wants to tease us back, make us keep wasting time? What, Galadon said, does it say? Bayon closed the envelope. It has only his signature and a crude depiction of male genitalia. From the trickster aspect, Mother said, he was here too last year. Of course he was, Demo repeated, then sighed. I'm ready to be off this rusting planet. What about you two? Yes, please, Galadon said. One of the eldest beings in the Cosmere, and he has the mental age of a 13-year-old. If this man ever returns, Bayon said, keep your distance. He isn't terribly dangerous, but things around him always are. When he's spotted, innocents get hurt. It's inevitable. Well, of course. He was the trickster aspect, spun out of the one to create chaos. But you couldn't just insult him by not serving him tea when he asked. A ding came from Galadon's pocket. Time, he said. The three men nodded to the two of them and started out. Bayon hesitated by the door. Things might be chaotic in your city for a little bit, but it will pass. Best stay inside. Then he too left. Dial hugged her mother, because they were alive, tense though it had been, but also because she was worried. Not just because of what Bayon had said, because it meant darkness had not yet come, and they still needed to fear him. Outside, people started shouting. I will look, Uma said in her tinkling voice. Stay strong. I do not know yet what this is. Mother nodded and grabbed Dial and led her up the steps as Uma went out the door. Their shop was part of a larger building, 4 stories high, and they helped keep it tidy and fix things, which meant Mother could take them up the access stairway all the way to the roof. There they burst out and found what was causing the chaos. Kusasech, the protector, had risen from the bay, the great multi-armed spren made only of a column of water. It had risen high in the air, larger than usual. That was all? Dial relaxed. She'd seen Kusasech many times. This was nothing to fear. But why then were so many people pointing and crying out? Why were so many running? It's the wrong time of day, her mother said, staring across the rooftops toward the bay. Kusasech, breaking tradition from the way he normally acted, waved his hands out to the sides, palms toward the city. And then, before him in the bay, the air split in a glorious, radiant font, a column of light. The gateway, Mother whispered, to the land of shadows. Honor's gateway. Oh, Father, Mother, ancestors will become one. Dial, it's time. Run and fetch the traveler packs. It's time. Dial froze. Time? The traveler packs? All good Ariali kept them, of course, in case they needed to leave, but that was mostly a formality unless it was time. People, Kusasech spoke. That spren never spoke. The voice was deep and vibrated the city, somehow loud enough to make her soul shake, but not so loud it hurt her ears. It is here. I am to be your guide for the 5th journey. Time. That meant time to continue the long trail, time to find the 5th land. Finally, shocked out of her reverie, she went running for the travel packs, terrified that this great day should have come during her life. The one was certainly testing her with new experiences. She wished there were a way to explain that she was filled up with them, that she'd rather experience some peaceful days without owners returning to the land or her mother starting to glow or the call to the long trail itself occurring. But it wasn't to be, as when she met back with her mother, Uma had returned. Mother was crying. "We will try," Mother whispered to the spren, who brightened the floor of the rooftop. "We will see how far you can go. Come, Dial, we mustn't miss the call. The gateway will not remain forever, and boats are already rowing out to meet it." And so she went with her mother, found their way to a boat with only their travel packs, joined with the light of the gateway, which she thought briefly must be like rejoining the one when she died. She emerged into a place of shadows with the leaders of their kind who had already begun preparing caravans to cross the darkness. Other portals she heard had opened all across Erie, one in every major city. Nearby, she did spy the 3 strangers passing, Demo complaining about the odd behavior for a perpendicularity of this nature. Mother settled her down on some blankets to wait as she went to find their position in the caravans. Dial clutched her pack to her chest, stunned by how fast it happened, stunned to realize that her time in the city with the shop was over. And so she whispered a quiet farewell. It was time to leave Roshar forever. So there you go. A little over 1 year from today, you will hopefully have that book in your hand. We're looking forward to seeing you next year at Dragonsteel. As I said, the vendors are still open for another hour, and I think I'm going to do something special here. I said that we were not going to have any sparkly shoes, but my sister is here running our charity booth. And if anyone really wants a pair of size 12 signed sparkly shoes, we'll have her have a little silent auction for these. We'll send the money probably to, Jane, if that's all right, the Primary Children's Hospital School Zone. So I know it's not Taylor Swift, but at least there's some sequins. Thank you all so much. I am going to go do the last signings I have done. I have the lightning signing followed by the other signing. I'm sorry I can't get to all of your books, but we're doing better and better each year, getting to more and more people. I think we got to around 2,500 this year, or 2,000 or so. So hopefully we'll be able to do even better next year. We will love to see you there. Enjoy the book, Defiant. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next year.